Hello and welcome to our very first Fearless podcast. I'm Emily Wood, the Special Projects Editor at the Business Record, and I'm joined by our Fearless Editor, Macey Shofroth, and a co-host that I'm super excited to introduce here in a moment. You might be asking, what is Fearless? Who are you? And why are you doing a podcast? We want to answer your questions today. Fearless is a statewide initiative of the Business Record with a goal to empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. It's a lofty goal, and for the past 5 years, since our launch in 2020, we've been doing our best to achieve it. We produce a weekly e-newsletter, feature stories in the Business Record, and have hosted in-person and virtual events. We are strong believers that women's issues are everyone's issues, and we try to cover gender equity with an inviting and intersectional approach. We're always looking for ways to engage with our audience all across Iowa, and that's one of our key goals with this podcast. With that said, I'm honored to introduce my co-host, LaDrina Wilson, who is a leadership coach and lives in the Quad Cities. She's the founder and CEO of Iman Consulting. LaDrina earned her PhD in educational leadership at Iowa State University, and she's spent time in higher education, the nonprofit space, and in business. She loves storytelling, and I'm excited for all the energy that she's going to bring to the podcast. So hi, LaDrina.
Hey, ladies. How are you?
Great. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about how you got acquainted with Fearless?
You know, I was thinking about this, and as we were having our different discussions, I can't identify the exact moment, but I do recall there being some chatter about different stories and that the Business Record was doing some storytelling for women. And so naturally, being kind of curious as I am, I went looking, and I definitely stumbled across the newsletter, subscribed to it. And really what stood out to me was that, you know, there was aligned values. So of course, I love storytelling. I love the idea of uplifting women. It's core and central to pretty much everything I do. And then in April of this year, I was approached to have this opportunity, an amazing opportunity to share a panel discussion with other entrepreneurs. After we got off of that particular panel discussion, I had so much energy. I was getting questions from people on LinkedIn that were involved. And so I reached out to Macey and just was like, how can I support you all? How can we be in partnership without even knowing that you all had this in the works? So it's certainly just, there's like this natural intersection of interest. And so super excited to be here and doing this with the both of you.
Awesome. And one of our favorite things from Fearless has been that ability to just connect different people across the state, and that sort of energy that has come from the events and our stories where people have wanted to reach out and be a part of it. So we're certainly happy to have you a part of the podcast. But what about the podcast in particular was interesting to you?
So full disclosure, I, as a child, was that kid. I excelled in school, but I'm old school. I'm going to date myself. This was back when you would get like a U or an S or an E. So like unsatisfactory, satisfactory. And I think it was like excellence or something like that. So I got really good grades, but there was always this social category, like about how you interact, you know, in the classroom and whatnot. I had a check mark every single report card for talks excessively. So when you ask me about a podcast and I think about my personality and how I like to connect with people, it is through talk and conversation. And so that was a natural fit for me when we decided to think about what partnership could look like. And I think on a more grounded level, when I think about the human experience and specifically the experiences of women, there's this psychological phenomenon that is known as the confidence gap. The confidence gap is really identified in a way where women are less likely than our male counterparts to speak positively about our skills and our accomplishments. And because we are less likely to speak on our skills and accomplishments, it impacts our career trajectories. It impacts our earning potential. And ultimately, I think this gives us an opportunity to ask the questions so that women can speak about what their experiences are with confidence. And it positions us to be able to create a space organically where people can not feel like they're bragging, but actually be humble enough and vulnerable enough to share their stories and experiences. So for me, that kind of feels like a natural fit, outside of liking to talk a lot, but also interacting with women and helping them address that, confidence gap. I hope that we're able to do that through this podcast.
Yeah. And I think, the natural ability to enjoy storytelling, to like to ask people questions and sort of get to know more than just the surface level stuff that we sometimes get to know, and even in networking settings, but just really getting to dig into the topics. And I think one thing from our standpoint that was important in having you involved is that, Macey and I come to this from a journalistic approach, but, you bring a different perspective as someone who's a business owner who has had lots of experience in higher education. So how do you plan to, integrate your experience into this work too?
Yeah, I think that people connect best when you do integrate your lived experiences. So one thing I will say, and I hope I answer the question, at least in a way that resonates with you or people who are listening, is my lived experience is this. I took some chances, but I didn't take those chances because I was fearless. I took those chances because I decided to, in spite of fear, like put myself out there. And so I know that there's always this little voice in me that's like, I don't know if you can do it. I don't know if it's going to work. But ultimately, I want to create a space through this podcast where women fear less. So fearless is without fear, but fearing less means we're like just reducing that to the point where you're able to act on those things, those dreams and desires that you have, that maybe you've kept quiet for a little while. And the way that I hope that my involvement with this helps elevate the work is that I'm not a journalist. And so I think that the journalistic viewpoint is incredibly important in this process. But I also think that there are some heart elements, human elements, as well as vulnerability that the journalistic perspective and the journalistic lens doesn't always necessarily prioritize. I know Macey is an amazing storyteller, and will continue to do that work, but I hope to bring just a heart to this work that is connected based on shared experiences that I have with other women. That's not about journalism. It's just about living life in our womanhood.
Yeah. And I love what you brought up about the name Fearless, because it's very much, we've often asked the folks we've covered, what does fearless mean to you? And a lot of people have said something along the same lines of, we're not without fear. No, none of us are have courage in everything that we do or every experience. And so fearless is really an aspirational title. It's meant to both to give us the confidence, but then also to think about how we can change the issues that do create real fear in our world, and how do we get past that. So it's definitely an aspirational title.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting part about it, though, is like you said, change the issues that create fear. There's the component of it that's like this interpersonal conflict that we have, that just, being in our own skin, living our own lives, trying to figure out how to wear multiple hats and the complexities that come with that. But then there's also environmental things that I think through our conversations we will elevate, that are happening in the workplace, that are happening in our homes, that maybe our male counterparts don't always understand. And that if we can be more vocal and productive in our conversations, we can gain shared understanding to work to adjust those environments where we can. Anyway, enough about me. Maybe we should flip the script since we're talking about kind of the name and the origin of Fearless. I would love to hear the origin story of Fearless. Like, how did you all get started and what were the goals?
Yeah, so Fearless started in November of 2020, but it was certainly not the only thing that the Business Record has done focused on empowering women. For those who don't know, the owner of the Business Record, Connie Weimer, is one of the most amazing trailblazers in the state. She's been a trailblazer in the media industry and in business in general, and certainly in the Des Moines area and across the state. But she has done a lot of things to empower women through the Business Record over the years, including starting Women of Influence Awards when there were a lot of women in the Des Moines area that weren't being recognized for all of the work that that they were doing where their male counterparts were getting that recognition. So she started that, and then that morphed into a business newsletter that came out that was more of aggregated content. And so as we talked about starting in 2019 and then continuing into 2020, we really wanted to launch something that was much more than that. We wanted it to be statewide. We wanted to talk about important stories that were not being told about gender issues, and also about women that just had unique perspectives that weren't being shared. So that was sort of the impetus behind Fearless and getting it started. But 2020 was a really interesting time, especially with the pandemic, where women were adversely affected, especially with the folks who were pushed to remote and then were asked to be the homeschoolers and all of these other responsibilities on top of it. And so we felt there was even a greater need, which was important as we launched it then.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I was like the IT department, the homeschooling mom, the VP, and helping all my team during that time. So it was definitely timely, even though that wasn't intentional. Yeah. As you described the origins, and I know that you couldn't have picked a better time if you tried to, because I distinctively remember that period, like trying to be the VP for my staff and knowing that they were trying to manage work and life. And then also the IT for my kids who were like not able to go to school, and, teaching a 7-year-old how to read. And I'm not a teacher. Like, it was just a crazy time. And I think that some things are like fate, right? Like, so you have this timely discussion that you've moved into this space of a more formalized publication and newsletter. And so I'm glad so many people have benefited from that. Speaking of the newsletter, Macey, I know that you are a phenomenal storyteller and you get to cover so many different experiences that women across this state have had. What is your favorite story that you've covered, or what are some of the favorite stories that you've covered?
Yes, thank you. I have quite a few that have been so fun to cover. I love to say my job is just telling the stories of cool women in Iowa doing cool things, and there's a lot of cool women doing a lot of cool things. And I see my role as kind of opening up possibilities for how women in Iowa can live, and I take that very seriously, so I really enjoy that. Some of my favorite stories I've written really early on when I first started, I got to write about a business owner in Bondurant. She owned her bakery and she experienced a racist comment from a customer, and kind of the story was like how she overcame that, but also just the story of her business. And she was really wonderful. I also got to talk to female athletic directors, which is a very male-dominated field, and so I talked to a few different high school athletic directors. I interviewed a young woman in college who started a nonprofit that has to do with period poverty, and she raises money to make sure all girls in Iowa have access to period products. And then I get to write some more personal essays that I really enjoy writing and getting to kind of talk about what I think and explore that. So we did one about fathers' roles in gender equity and how they can advance gender equity. And one of my favorites, I got to write about my own experience being a volunteer leader at a camp for kids with diabetes and getting to pour into the young women who are 16 and 17 and how that can build them and become the women leaders of tomorrow, who hopefully I get to write about in a couple of years as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like you are like kind of covering a wide variety of things, from healthcare related to issues to, even the gender dynamics and how men fit into those stories, to race and all the things. So it sounds like you really lived out that aspiration of dealing with women's issues and intersectionality. And so kudos to you guys for just doing this really important work and elevating the work that you've been doing over the past 5 years. Like, you're really taking it to the next level. And I've enjoyed watching your growth and your how you've engaged in this work in the last year or so, Macey.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of stories to tell and a lot of people who deserve to have their stories told.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that is, like, there's so many women who don't recognize that you have a story worthy experience. They're just living their lives. And it's so gratifying to see like how people don't see their worth. And then this gives them a platform to be able to see just how dynamic they are. So you've got this like wildly popular publication, and I realize you guys are doing really well. Why is the Business Record like invested in this work?
Yeah, I think that this that Fearless is such a different product for us compared to anything else that we do, because we have that emphasis on work and life. And a lot of the other products that we do at the Business Record are very much work focused and sort of, we disrupt expectations from time to time, but of course it's more of what you would expect from a business publication. And Fearless really disrupts that norm a lot. But again, when we started it, we wanted it to be about the work and life issues. We wanted it to be about how none of us show up into our jobs without all of the things that we carry from our lives. And so we felt that it was important to be able to cover issues, anything from, domestic violence and healthcare, all of the things that Macey has just mentioned there, because those things affect how we show up in the workplace. And so we really wanted to have that kind of broader approach to it.
Yeah, so true. I think that the thing with whether it's a business publication or even just what you see on social media, we often only get to see the finished product or this like elevated version, refined, polished, edited version of people, when there's a whole backstory that are these things that you've mentioned, Emily, whether it is complex social issues that they are navigating in their homes and that have very personal experiences with. And we don't get to just show up at work and say, oh, I'm going to sit this over here and bring this identity over here, right? So I love that you continue to hold space for the whole experience that we all are bringing into our work. So the publication is going well. There are, how many people across the state are accessing the newsletter?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I know there's a few thousand and other folks that engage with us in our events. I know it's also one of our newsletters that has the highest pass along rate. So a lot of people like to share it with their friends, coworkers, and so on.
Awesome. Well, the reason I asked that question, and sorry, I know it was a little impromptu, but the reason I asked that question is because if you have something that's going well and it's, from my vantage point, a pretty well-oiled machine, why the podcast?
I think the podcast opens an opportunity for what we've been describing here with Fearless, is that a lot of these stories are vulnerable, complex subjects, and we've done a great job with our stories and our guest opinions of getting into that. But some conversations, I think, are better lent to conversations. They're better lent to a discussion and being able to actually, have different perspectives weighing in. So there's lots of these topics that we just felt were ripe for that conversational component. And the podcast is a great opportunity for us to do that.
I also think it shows like your flexibility and your ability to be nimble. Like people are living a fast-paced life. There's plenty of things that I wish that I could read. I used to think that when I love reading books, like in actual publications, holding the paper in my hand. I know that's old school. And I used to feel like audiobooks were cheating. But like, if I actually want to learn and be informed, I've had to embrace the fact that like, this is the mode where people are connecting now, whether it's through a podcast, something that you can take on the go, something you can consume in your car. And so I'm hoping we're able to offer that to people. As we are building this together and we're thinking about the dynamic conversations that we're going to have, what do you think people can expect from the podcast? What will listeners be able to glean from this?
I think that they'll be able to listen in and hear inspiration, but also get to think about complex ideas from perspectives that they maybe haven't before. I hope that people always come away from the podcast, one, feeling a little bit encouraged to go about whatever it is that they have going on in their lives. But I also hope that they feel more informed about about a variety of issues and also get exposed to lots of great leaders across the state.
Yeah. I think we're going to meet some really cool people. And I love the idea that it's leaders, but also recognize that like people can lead from exactly where they're at. So to whoever's out there listening, maybe one day we'll be reaching out to you and you may not see yourself in that light or in that vein, but hopefully we can help people recognize their superpowers. I'm super excited about this. Thanks for chatting with me a little bit today. I know there's some other things that we'll be able to discuss in more depth over the next couple of months. But Emily and Macey, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm very excited about growing the relationship with Fearless, getting to know more about women across the state. But for your work, I wouldn't be able to participate. So thanks so much, ladies.
Yeah, we are so grateful to have you. And this podcast was very much introductory, but we're looking forward to bringing on fearless guests and hosting conversations about important gender issues topics and answering your questions. We want you to be a part of the storytelling. So for our audience, please reach out to us anytime. We know you have great ideas and good questions. And speaking of good questions, next time on the Fearless podcast, we'll be answering a question from an audience member. A few months ago, Macey teased in the newsletter that we had some new content coming and wanted audience input for topics that we should dig into. And someone wrote to us having a different identity from others seated around the table. They wrote, "I'd like advice for women to gain respect and authority when comments are made that they're the only female in the room of males. They're young, at least 15 to 20 years younger than anyone else in the room. Or that the person that they're speaking to makes a comment like, 'I'm probably older than your dad.' I could come up with dozens of examples of various comments like these. I'm 30 with a decade of experience in this industry. I've thought about snide remarks afterwards and asked others for advice, but still feel a bit fearful with my appearance as a youthful woman and feel as though I have to earn respect while my younger male colleagues are given it, internally and by clients." So this is a great topic, and we're looking forward to discussing it with our special guests on the next Fearless podcast. Thanks for listening.